We're here with the 1.9 Wraith. We're going to walk through doing a free Fastback modification, and we're going to swap to Brushless. What's going on, everyone? Today we're back with the Axial 1.9 Wraith, and today what we're going to handle is we're going to do a Fastback modification in the rear, reusing some of the stock plastic links that came with this vehicle, and we're going to swap out that brushed motor and speed control for a Hobbywing Axe brushless system. Now, Hobbywing gave me one of these Axe systems before they came out to try out, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like the low-end feel to it, the startup speed just wasn't there, and the punch just didn't feel right for how much power it should have had. I tried a couple of the software revisions after the initial one, and it helped a little bit, but since then they've done even more, and I'm told that now most of those issues that I had should be fixed. And we're going to put it into the 1.9 Wraith. I'm going to update the settings, and that is what we're going to test in this rig. I've got the 2200 kV version. They've since come out with faster ones, which I probably would have preferred, but at this point we've got this one, and hopefully now I can compare apples to apples with the old version that I tried and now the new updated one. First, we're going to do the Fastback mod. So we're going to cut this cage up, and I'm going to test fit which of the stock links that I want to use. Now, the stock links come in kind of a varying number of shapes and things like that. The lower links have this more truss style design like a full-size truck would have. I don't want to use these because I don't think they really match the style of the other tubes, so I don't think that's the right look. Of course, the tie rod is supposed to look like a steering ram, and end links, definitely not going to use that one. So we're left with 3 other stock links. Obviously, we need to use 2 matching links, so that leaves us with the 2 rear upper links. From my initial eyeballing of these, they look like they're going to be about perfect, so we're going to find out here very soon. I'm going to take this roof panel off, and then we're going to start cutting this thing apart. I'm also going to take and modify the roof panel, of course, to fit this, but at that time I'm also going to take the chance to make a template of this stock roof and transfer it to some 025 thick aluminum, and I'm going to make myself an aluminum roof skin just because I think that looks cooler. So let's dive into this and see what we can get done. First, we're going to remove the roof panel. We'll set the roof panel aside for now. I'm going to take the super lazy way out, and I'm just going to pull the body down around the edge. I'll be able to sand and file this with this in place, but you probably should just take the body off. And then we're just going to take our big side cutters, and we're going to cut these 2 posts off in the back, as well as all the way across this top portion right behind the post that goes between the 2 B-pillars. I'm going to remove this screw here at the top of the B-pillar, and then the one along that back corner. So now I have one of those rear upper links. I'm going to take the pivot balls out of both sides, and then we're just going to try and kind of mock them up into place here on the cage. We're going to put it between the outside portion of the chassis and the top portion. I'm going to go ahead and just screw this into place just to make sure that it does look like it's going to be as close as it appears. Once you get the body up in place, it looks like it's going to sit really well. Looks like it pulls it up just a hair, but it really just matches the back of that body line. I honestly don't see any issues with this. So with this link being a good fit, I'm going to go ahead and take it back out now, and I'm going to start sanding all of these cuts smooth so it looks more like it's supposed to be that way. After getting everything sanded smooth, putting the links back in, and attaching those screws again, now we've got a Wraith with a completely different look. Super simple, doesn't cost you any money at all. Now on to the roof portion. I think that these trucks do look better with a roof skin in place, but I want to go to an aluminum version versus this plastic one. But I'm going to put the plastic one on and just kind of mock it up into place so I can decide what exactly I want to do with the tail end of it. One thing to note, if you aren't planning on making a new roof skin, is that since you're putting those links between this top panel and the outside, you do move your screw holes out just a hair on each side. So you will need to open up those holes on this existing roof panel if you plan to use it again. With the roof panel in place, I'm going to take and put a piece of 3-inch wide masking tape across this rear section to start. I'm going to put just a short little section that bends down and follows the Fastback. That way it helps kind of cover up this area back here where we've got pieces overlapping and things like that. Just to make it look a little bit more seamless. With that new rear line marked, I'm going to take the panel back off and we're going to make a full template for this to transfer onto the aluminum. So I've got the blue painter's tape overlapping the top. I'm going to lay it down. I'm just going to trim around the outside. With the rest of the template trimmed, I'm also going to trim the backside along that line so I can peel that off, and then we only are left with the template we want to create. Now we're going to take and peel off this template, starting from the bottom layer and going towards the top so that all of our overlaps stay in place. This is 0.025 thick aluminum. I'll link to where you can get some online in the description below. So now we've got that shape put on the panel. We're going to cut it out now with a pair of tin snips. After doing a simple test fit of the roof, I then am going to transfer those front holes onto the panel first. Then I'm going to drill, make sure that it fits again, just work into it in steps rather than trying to do everything at once and hoping that everything works out exactly perfect. The width looks great. I think the tail end looks pretty good. I'm gonna mark the other two holes so we can get those two drilled perfectly. And then we'll do a couple of finish bends and a little bit of sanding along the edges just to clean it up. We need to put this front bend in place to make sure that it matches the contour of the original front. And then we just need to put this break across the back so it goes down and touches these rear bars. I'm gonna use my 4-inch flat jaw pliers to put the bend in. Looks like it fit pretty good, so we're gonna go ahead and take all of the tape off now, and we're gonna sand all of the edges smooth. I'm just knocking the big stuff down with a large file, and then we'll come back with a 3N sanding block, get everything nice and even, and then we'll do like a brushed look on top. So now we have a look that looks a little bit more appropriate. That super shiny raw look kind of shows waves and ripples and things like that. But once you take that shiny off and go to this brushed look, everything just kind of blends in together much better. So this is the look that I like. And of course, it's not going to look this good for long. We're going to scratch it up, beat it, dent it, and that adds some real world trail damage and character. And that's what I really like about using aluminum like this. So now we're going to bolt it back in place for the final time. So now, after sufficiently changing the look of this thing, let's tear the heart out of it and put this new brushless system in. I'm going to drop the skid plate out by removing the 4 bolts around the outside. With the skid plate loose, now I'm going to remove the 4 screws holding the transmission into the chassis. Looks like we're going to have to remove 1 drive shaft to be able to completely remove this from the chassis. We'll also need to remove these 2 screws on the boat side to release the ESC tray from the chassis. Before we can remove the ESC, we'll need to open up that receiver box in the front to unplug it from our receiver. And lastly, when removing the ESC from the chassis, you'll need to unplug those front LED lights because they're currently powered by the ESC. So for now, we're not going to have front LEDs in this vehicle. So now that we have the transmission free, we'll remove the spur gear cover. And in here now we can remove the 2 screws holding the motor to this motor plate. The stock motor has a 13-tooth pinion installed. The X system that I have already has a 13-tooth pinion installed, so I'm not going to swap those over. So now for the Axe motor itself. These motors are completely specific to the ESCs that they come with. This motor and ESC are paired together with a special style of sensor wire, not the typical style sensor wire you're probably used to seeing. So these two actually screw together to make this connection. It is a bit of a bulky connection and it's mid-span in here, so you can't adjust the length, you can't buy a shorter one, it's just the length that it is. Now this version that I have on hand came with the wires pre-soldered, which I believe that they all do, but the length of the wires is different from the length of the sensor cable, so you end up with this kind of funky loop going on. And from what I've seen, I believe this is pretty standard. But we need to orient this onto our transmission so that we can then make sure everything clears underneath of that interior. So I've got the motor installed onto the motor plate. We've got the gear mesh set, which is a very tiny amount of back and forth lash. I oriented the cables at about a 30-degree up angle from the bottom there. So now I'm going to kind of hold this transmission up into place inside of the chassis and see how exactly I need to route these cables so that I can easily reinstall this ESC back onto this ESC tray. The ESC just easily pulls off with some force. It's just held on by some simple double-sided tape. So from the looks of it, I think we're going to be able to take this, kind of loop the wires over the top, pointing the positive and negative leads towards the front of the vehicle where the battery connection is going to go, also allowing us to route our signal wire up to the front. And this one also uses a non-detachable on-off switch. I don't love on-off switches. I almost never run them, but with the Hobbywing thing, it also has a set button on it that you use for programming, so you have to keep this. I centered the ESC on the ESC tray as best as possible, and now we're just gonna try and fish this whole system back up into the 1.9 Wraith as a whole unit. Then I'm going to route my new ESC wire up to the front receiver box. And since I currently don't have anything to power my front LEDs, I'm gonna run this pigtail up into the receiver box now as well and just kind of tuck it in there. Then I'm gonna replace the lid of the receiver box and then replace the 4 screws on the bottom. And lastly, for that on-off switch, I put it right here against this angled piece of the inner fender well. Hopefully the battery clears it without an issue and never hits that power button and stops this thing while I'm driving, but we'll see. Again, not a huge fan of power buttons, but at least we've got it attached. Now I do need to do a little bit of cable management just to make sure my ESC wire, this power switch wire, and those rear wires for the motor and sensor are all controlled. So now the brushless system is in there, but let's get into a little bit about the details of it. I haven't ran it again yet, so this isn't going to be the time where I really get the new feel of it. But to give you a little bit of background on this system, it's supposed to be different than a normal brushless sensored system. It's supposed to be an FOC style controller. And basically what it wants to do is when you pull the trigger halfway, it wants to keep the tires spinning at half speed. And why that's a little bit weird is that if you've been driving RCs a lot and you pull the trigger and you kind of come up to a ledge or a rock or something that might start to get you a little bit more drag or bind on it, you can feel that your car slows down and you need to give it more throttle to kind of get up that or spin the tires back up to speed or things like that. You can kind of feel what the car is doing. This wants to try and modulate that itself so that whatever speed you're pulling the trigger is what speed the tires are always going, no matter what the load is. Therefore, if you get bound up quickly, it's going to feed in a bunch of power itself quickly to try and pop this thing up and keep it moving. And that can be a little bit different feeling. Where that is supposed to be of a benefit though, specifically is controlling this in a downhill driving situation. Now both Castle Antique and both have systems that are much smoother with downhill descent now. They don't just freewheel and go down like old brushless systems used to. But this is a different style system, and that was part of what I didn't like at the start. But hopefully now with these new updates, this is a more reasonable system for my appeal. I've seen a lot of people who are running these systems and really like them. I just wasn't one of them yet. And I'm gonna do the update and then we're gonna give it a run again and we'll see exactly how I feel about it at that time. So if you're interested in the Axe system, later on down the road, I'll be able to form a new opinion on it. But until then, we'll just have to wait and see. But otherwise, for tonight, we did some work that really changed the look of this rig. I'm super happy with the outcome. The new Fastback rear, I think, just looks much better than the station wagon style look that the Wraith normally has. This is an easy, free mod that just changes the look, really transforms the whole car. Next, I would really like to finish doing some sort of drop bed for the rear, but you'll have to wait for the next video for that because we have plenty more that I plan to do to this truck. So as always guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate all the feedback you guys gave me on the last one and how this series is going in general. I'm excited to work on this. I know some of you are getting these and working on them yourselves. So if you liked the video, make sure to hit the like button. If you didn't, there's a button for that as well. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're not already, the notification bell so you see them as soon as they pop up. And thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.